And it was the fact that children today, between 14 and 24, so globally, the second biggest killer of that youth group is suicide, right? So the second biggest killer of our children is them choosing not to stay on the planet. You know, I lived in Sri Lanka the last few years for a while. I didn't know how to lead a team in the middle of a social, economic, political collapse. Literally AK-47s on every corner, and like people overthrowing the president's house and swimming in their swimming pool, and no electricity and no pet. I don't know how to lead a team in that because nobody ever taught me that, right?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in today's episode, Changemaker Stories, with me, Catherine. Today, I have a very special guest. I'm just very excited for her, and I'm sure that you will love her. And I have Mimi Nicklin here with me.
Hi. I'm also very excited.
Thank you so much, Mimi, for coming in here today, participating in my Changemaker Stories. And yeah, I would love to share your story to people who are considering to embark on career change or to really create the life that they really desire. I think that is the simple objective. And I would love them to get to know you first. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
So my name is Mimi, and I am an author, and I spend my time spreading empathy around the world. So I'm a great believer that we need more understanding in our world. So most of my life, I'm on an aeroplane, in fact, flying around the world, doing workshops and masterclasses and keynotes and writing books, all about this evolutionary skill set that we have. But that hasn't always been my work. I spent the first sort of 17 years of my career in marketing and advertising. And I spent nearly all of that in Asia and Africa. So I'm joining you today from Malaysia. And outside of that, I'm a mum. I have a 6-year-old little girl, and I have a dog and 2 cats. So that's who I am.
Wow, it's a big family there. A few cats. How many? How many cats?
So we're full out there, full of children and pets.
Wow, wonderful. So it caught my attention because this is also the reason why I started looking into your profile and that you were in advertising. So I started my career in advertising as well. And so how long have you been in advertising, Mimi?
Oh gosh, I started as a graduate. So my dad was an ad man. And so I knew I always wanted to be in advertising, which is quite rare because most people, not all, but most people kind of fall into advertising. But for me, from 12 years old, I knew exactly where I was going. And today I do actually still have a branding business. So I have a branding agency based in Dubai. And we still do lots of work in storytelling and creativity. So a long time, nearly 20 years.
Wow, amazing. And Mimi, would love to hear from you. How did it all happen? That you suddenly do so many different things, and that's just so inspiring. But tell us, from where you got started and what really happened then until you suddenly open up and then just do all of these different things. Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people are wondering, okay, maybe I could write a book, but don't do it. Maybe I could to be a speaker, but don't go ahead for it. So I wonder, if you can take us back to that moment.
Well, the first thing I'll say, Catherine, is so people ask me relatively often, how do you seemingly do it all, right? And I think that social media creates that perception because, of course, the way we share on social really does make it feel like we can, some of us, we can do it all and we're doing all these different things. So the first thing I would say is that don't believe everything you see on social, right? Not that anything is not true, especially on my social. It's incredibly consistently me. Like, there's nothing fake on there. But at the same time, of course, you only show your work. You don't show your whole life, or at least for me, I don't show my personal life really on there. So I think for anyone that's looking at others thinking like, how do they do that? Anyone can do it. You can do it, right? Don't judge yourself by what social media tells you somebody else is doing. And there's that sort of quote that people always say is that everybody has their struggles, you just don't know what they are, right? So that would be the first thing I'd say, because I love that you invited me, and I love that other women might think like we want to try and follow a journey like that, and it has been amazing. But first of all, yeah, don't compare yourself to other people, because all of our journeys are unique, and just the way I do it is only the way I did it. But the second thing, and you kind of touched on it there, is just around self-belief. And I haven't always had it. So I don't know how many English speakers, sort of native English speakers, are tuning in, but in English, we have a phrase called fake it until you make it. And that is basically the answer. Catherine, how did I do it? I just made it up, right? So back in 2018, I was in Dubai, and I had taken a corporate role there. I had moved to Dubai in 2018 to take up an advertising agency job. Long story short, that job wasn't what they told me it was. In that process, I was totally overwhelmed by the role. It was a CEO role. I thought it was going to be a very corporate, established role like I'd done before, but it was extremely entrepreneurial, and the business was pretty much bankrupt. I had none of the skills to do that. So it was not easy. In fact, it was very overwhelming. And in that process, I met a business coach, and I had lunch with her, and I was asking her for advice on how this region works. And Dubai was a very different city in 2018 than it is today. It shifted a huge amount. And in that conversation, she asked me about my leadership style, and I was talking about intuition. And she stopped me and she said, is it intuition or is it empathy? And at the time I said, it's not empathy. What's empathy got to do with anything? But what it did was provoke a passion, right? So I went away. I started researching what empathy is. I discovered something called the empathy deficit, which is the lack of connectivity in our world. And that was the beginning of everything else. And the reason I'm saying that is the other part of my answer to how do you do it all, or how do you shift careers, or how do you live your purpose, is it has to start with a really clear passion. And for me, that was it. And the piece of data that really kind of changed my life probably was around youth. And it was the fact that children today between 14 and 24, so globally, the second biggest killer of that youth group is suicide, right? So the second biggest killer of our children is them choosing not to stay on the planet, right? So crazy. So I found my like incentive, right? I thought, hang on a minute, why is no one talking about this empathy deficit? Why are we not doing anything about this? It was something that was coined in 2006 by President Obama. 20 years later, we had done very little about it. So the second part of that was finding a passion and just really wanting to do something about it. Of course, I can't on my own ever in a million years even impact those statistics. But I did want to do work that felt that it was able to share some of these pieces of information and educate people on the power of connection and what happens when we don't have it, and how dangerous that is to the human race. And that led from, one thing to another from there. I wrote the book, I started the podcast, 85,000 people came to my bedroom to listen to me somehow. And from then life changed. So yeah, I mean, it all came from passion, really.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love that. The self-belief, the passion. Yeah, I think that's really, really insightful. Thank you so much. And I just want to share it here because you all don't know this, but I reach out to Mimi on LinkedIn, and this is how I get her here. And she's been so generous. I just want to say that. And I think one critical part for me is really just to find role models, people who are passionate in something. And I hesitated a lot, but I did it anyway, and I have gotten such a warm response from Mimi. So yeah, I think this is something that I want to share, that you just don't know that the person will help you, and keep reaching out, keep sharing your passion, and then yeah. So thank you, Mimi, for being here. And on empathy, also I want to share that one thing that really stayed in my head, what Mimi said, was that empathy is, you need empathy to actually have that, for not just for like-minded people, but for everybody. And in fact, that's where you put empathy on test, I would say. Right? And that's where empathy really, really matters. Also, that you do open up for those people. Can you make space for those people too, so that we can create this more inclusive, empathetic world? So I found it really, really insightful, and I was very, very touched by it.
As people, we need empathy for each other. We need empathy for the people that we, like you said, that we know, that we don't know, probably more so that the people we don't know. And I think, to your point earlier, and I loved your message, and that's why I replied. I think, I could tell your passion in your first message, but I wanted to say what you said to your audience as well, which is, my mum used to tell me this as well, right? If you don't try, you'll never know. Right. So they might not reply if you ask for help or sponsorship or support, whatever it is that you're asking for, right? That person might not reply, but what's the worst that can happen? They don't reply. If you don't try, you'll never know. And that goes hand in hand with one other thing that I think I learned, which is I say yes to not everything, but nearly everything, right? If I can do it, I'm in the right country at the right time, or my life with my little girl, whatever it is, I will say yes all the time. And I think that there is this rhetoric out in there in the media, and it's not bad, but that tells us women that to be more empowered and to be more equal and all these things, we must say no, and we must put barriers up, and we must protect our time. And I agree with that. You should protect your time. But if you don't lean into opportunity, female or otherwise, okay, how are you ever going to build relationships? Right? Yeah. I wouldn't even know Catherine if I hadn't said, hey, that sounds interesting. I'm very happy to hear about it, right? So that would be the other thing I say. If you're interested in doing something different, say yes to doing something different, because otherwise you'll never get there. And that's what I've been doing for 4 years, and it seems to be working.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. And what has helped you, Mimi? You talked to us about talking with a business coach. I'm not sure if that was also one of the things, but what has helped you in that period when you started exploring different things and embarking on?
I think there's, interestingly, I didn't see the business coach for very long, but she was hugely impactful in my journey. So I think that there is massive power in just being able to speak, right? And as a leader, often there's no one really to organize your thinking, right? So I think that is really powerful. I think the two things that I hold really true in terms of skill sets, I guess what helps me is patience and resilience. Patience, because again, back to social media, and I do this too. You look at other people and think, how have they done that? How can I do that? Why have they done it so quickly? Why is their website better than mine? Blah, 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 all those things, right? Success never comes overnight, but it often makes it look like it does, right? And you think, how has that person gone from A to B so quickly? But you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes, right? So I think I have to, for me, all the time, I have to remind myself to be patient, right? And I always say, I said at dinner last night, this is a 10-year game, not a 10-minute game, right? Because I'm super enthusiastic.
I love that. Yes.
I want to do it all now, right? I want to go to and do whatever. But that's not the goal, right? The goal is to make this very sustainable. So the first thing I find really helpful is to remind myself to be patient. The second thing I said is resilience, because any shift, any change, whether that's career, habit, lifestyle, skill set, change takes time, right? You can't change overnight. And it's difficult. Human beings, we don't like change, right? Any change is uncomfortable, because if it wasn't, it wouldn't be changing. So you have to be resilient, right? It's tiring. If I told you the amount of hours I work most of the year, and how far I'll travel for a workshop, and the amount of time zones I'll cross, and then come back and still, make dinner and put my little girl to bed, and all the things I want to do as a mom, that resilience is your only asset, right? And that's not just as a woman. I think that's as anyone. And you have to find ways to protect it, so to refuel, but also to be conscious of it. Like, I am super conscious of that resilience, right? Some days I'm exhausted. You can see today, like, I'm wiping my eye. I'm telling you all.
I cannot see anything.
Crying, right? It's crying. It's crying. It's not sick. There's nothing wrong with my eye. I'm just tired, right? Because the last 4 nights I worked way past midnight because I'm finishing my second book. So these things happen. You can't be beautiful and in your moment the whole time, right? You have to be patient, know where you're going, and then find your resilience, right? In whatever form that is. I did my yoga this morning. I had my tea. Just find ways, because today's a tired day, right? Yeah. Be gentle with yourself on that. You can't always be your best.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for the reminder. Was gonna ask, what's your practice that you know, because you foster the patience and resilience. And I would love to know what's your practice, your ritual. You mentioned yoga. Is that one thing
I
you
didn't
get?
for a long time. I've started again recently. For
Hmm.
me, because my work is my passion and my passion is my work. Honestly, I know it's a cliche, but truly it doesn't feel like work. Truly. I have to
Mm.
explain this to my partner all the time. He's like, but you're emailing. I'm like, I know, but I love it. It's not like working in corporate when it feels different, right? So for me, I have to do something else if I'm going to not work. Because if you think, for example, being on LinkedIn is a huge part of my work, it is because I'm building, people I know, and I want to spread the word, and I want to build empathy. So I need to meet more people, right? So it's work, but I love it. But if I want to not do that, I have to find something else to do, because otherwise all night I could sit on LinkedIn, replying and commenting, and I love it, but you're not going to get rest from it. So I have to either go out, which sounds, ridiculous, but I have to exit the house, like go for dinner, go for pizza, or maybe watch a movie or put on Netflix, do something else, spend time with my daughter if it's the daytime,
Yeah.
play, whatever it is, because my default will go back to my passion, and my passion
Mm.
is work. So even though I love it, that's still working. Your brain is still active. Your neurological system is still active. You might still have that tension in your body because you're trying to get all your deadlines done. So my habit is, whatever it is, I have to do something else, because otherwise the something comes back to the laptop.
And I guess I can resonate with that on so many levels, that for some of us, we are so passionate with the work. And I personally find it hard to slow down. So I
Mm.
have to remind myself, slow down, Catherine, patience and
10
slow.
years, not 10
Yeah,
minutes.
exactly, exactly. And that is hard to
Yes.
to remind ourselves that. Yeah, thank you for sharing your practice. And is there anything that you have overcome and you would like to share to the
Mm.
audience here today?
I think self-belief, and I'm not sure I've overcome it. Some days I have. Um, I think it's an ongoing thing, and lots of people say that's being a woman. Maybe it is. I'm not sure it is. I think it's just a human
Mm.
thing. Every time things change, you're going to have a small, I don't know, not crisis in self-belief, but pause and say, can I do this? Right? Am I able to do this? Do I have the skill set to do this? Do I have the experience to do this? Are they sure they want me to do this? Right? And that's very much an ongoing thing to overcome, right? And again, I think when you're on social, and I make a lot of video content, so people think that you're always in that moment. But you're not, right? Because often I'll get emails. I mean, I got an email today from a huge global brand in Los Angeles. Hey, Catherine, I read it and I was like, are they talking to me? Right? Like, did they mean to email me about this? So there's always, I think, that moment, because you're growing. And that's the thing
Yeah.
with discomfort. And that's the thing with growth, right? All those cliches are true. When you're out of your comfort zone, it's not comfortable, right? So you have to constantly overcome that. And I said, the way I do that is I go back to the patience, but
Yeah.
also the key goingness, just say yes. Like, not irresponsibly. I'm not going to do something that I know I can't deliver, right? And I get in that vein, saying there's also something I've right. Often people will message me and say, like, can you do a keynote on personal branding? I always say no. Can I do
Mm.
personal branding? Yes, I do it every single day. But that's not my focus, right? I
Yeah.
don't want to be on stage to talk about that, because I have a higher, I don't know, purpose to talk about
Yeah.
empathy. Saying no is also important.
Yeah.
But overcoming any of those self-confidence things and just saying, sure, if
Yeah.
they think I can do it, probably they're right. So yeah, it doesn't go away. That's not like a barrier you overcome and then it's done. I'm still practicing.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a reminder because growth happens outside of your comfort zone, which is your post recently, right? And
Yes.
it is so
I did.
true.
I'm like, yeah, I did
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah, and it feels like you're not ready for it. And but in fact you need to do it before you feel ready. Because often when you feel ready, it's too late. It's
Yes.
probably 10 years later. And I just pick this perhaps for myself because I always waited previously. And I said, who feels ready? And in fact, I just need to start doing something before I feel ready. So I'm also very, very about reminding other women because I hear that a lot in my community as well, that they don't feel ready. And I said, precisely now, you can actually do something. Yeah. And Mimi, you have a really interesting profile, inspiring because you're in the corporate world, but also an entrepreneur. And you talked about two such important skills, patience and resilience. And let me tell you why I think these are really, really important skills in my eyes, because I see the future of work is changing. And I see that change is inevitable. Long gone the generation of our parents, who has one job for the entire life.
Yes.
and and I think this resilience and patience and self-belief are the ingredients for you to be, for all of us to be able to manage change in our lives. And I think people don't prioritize that and don't realize that these are hard skills because they have to look within, to look within them. And the concern I have is because we're so into this modern life, we get so impatient with stuff. So I noticed this for myself. I told you my laptop died last week. You couldn't imagine my frustration with this new laptop. I have to type in all the logins each time, and I
Oh,
get so
yeah, I get
impatient.
that. I get it.
But also I have the awareness, right? I have this awareness, Catherine. This is the first world problem that you have. And I always remind myself, with all this modern fast-paced life, we are creating a generation of impatient people. We all want shortcuts. And I myself, I like to remind myself to not go there, Catherine, be patient. So I guess with the future of work changing and all of the skills that you mentioned are so important, what would be your advice to people, just, if they want to stay in corporate or even they're an entrepreneur, what do you see more skills are required in the future, so that we can thrive in professional world?
Yeah, I have things to say. The first thing I want to respond to is you saying first world problems, right? I know what that's like. It happened to me about 6 or 7 months ago when my laptop broke, and it's like all panic lets loose, right? But I want to say something to you, Catherine, but also to all of the listeners, which is, just because somebody else's problem is bigger doesn't make your problem smaller, right? Because I think the world is so difficult, right? And the news, and it's so hard to look at the horror in our world, right? And of course, for women living through genocide, our broken laptop is not comparable, right? But we cannot constantly compare our own small reality to the reality of the entire planet or other people on the planet, right? Because it will exhaust you, right? It's fair on yourself, right? So I learned that lesson quite a long time ago because of the work I do, because I'm so connected to people. And I wanted to share that because for you in that moment, I'm picking on your laptop story now, but for you in that moment, like all of us listening to you know what that is like, right? So I wanted to say that because I think it's really important to recognize ourselves in the macro world that we live in, right? And yeah, maybe they are first world problems because other people don't have them, but that doesn't make them smaller for you, right? Yeah. So that's probably the first thing I'd say. And the thing you're talking about is kind of skills for the future, but a lot. But it is a really important one, and it's really underspoken about, because you'll hear people talk about resilience and vulnerability and flexibility and nimbleness and all of these things. And we do need them all, right? Because the world is very changeable, very inconsistent. Governments are overthrown and things change, and global pandemics appear out of nowhere. So yes, you need all those things. But to answer your question, if I really had to choose one, I would choose patience, because you never hear people talking about it. And I think it's absolutely critical because the world is so fast. And the thing is that fast solutions normally are short solutions, right? You can shortcut everything, but you'll never create sustainability out of a shortcut, And I don't mean sustainability of the planet, although that too, right? So I think that as you navigate all of these things, you have to be patient with yourself, with the people you work for, with your bosses. They don't know what they're doing, most of them, right? The world wasn't like this 5 years ago. Okay. I can tell you, because I led teams through the last 5 years. I didn't, I lived in Sri Lanka the last few years for a while. I didn't know how to lead a team in the middle of a social, economic, political collapse. Literally AK-47s on every corner, and like people overthrowing the president's house and swimming in their swimming pool, and no electricity and no pet. I don't know how to lead a team in that because nobody ever taught me that, right? So that's why patience is so important. Patience with yourself, patience with your journey, patience with your business. It's growing, but it's doing it at its own time. Patience with your community, like many of us trying to build communities, one person at a time. And patience with others, because as I said, your bosses, your leaders, the world leaders, right? They don't know what they're doing either most of the time, because all of us are learning all the time. So yeah, I find that it's hard, but I find it's not easy, right? It's a simple thing to follow. Make it easy to do it, but it's one you can stick to. And from all the people I kind of mentor and work with, I think it makes a difference.
Yeah,
it takes the pressure off.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning patience, but also I'm hearing also empathy, like to be empathetic self. When get from that lens, absolutely. Thank you. I do want to honor your time, and I would love to know if you have a message for the audience here today about empathy or about your community. I would love that they know about it too.
Yeah. Oh, no, I mean, really what I would say is probably my favorite message, which is that we are all more alike than we are different. And I think that's so important because of the state of the world. And yes, I could tell you about my community and my Instagram page and my book and all of these things. But actually, what's more important than all of that is the recognition of our similarity, right? So we're all different backgrounds, different religions, different creeds, different countries, different all of those things. But at the core of all my work and the core of all my experience is that actually the things that connect us are far more than the things that pull us apart. And if we can remember that a little bit more often, we'll be able to fill so many of these holes that are apart, both in, I guess, body and mind, our health and our wellness. So yeah, Catherine, that's what I would like to leave you with. And that's my journey. So if anyone wants to jump on board and help me do it, or anyone wants to learn more about it, then they can find me at Mimi Nicklin pretty much on every social platform out there. So you can find me there, and I'd love to share.
Thank you so much. I found it very, very insightful and so wise. And thank you for the reminder. Take these words to my heart. Thank you, Mimi. Really appreciate it.
You are welcome. Thank you for having me. Bye.
So let's stop.